100 criminal charges against a former DNA analyst who put plenty of people in prison herself.
There will be arguments undoubtedly that, that evidence is forever tainted and frankly that CBI itself is tainted.
The Trump administration threatens to prosecute state and local leaders who they decide have interfered with mass deportations, as Democrats in Colorado say they won't help out beyond getting violent criminals out. The end of an institution in Denver. Family talks about the closing of a family-owned business.
We've had customers that grew up here. Their parents brought them here since they were kids.
And when the cold hit, the shelter opened its doors to families living in cars and bus stops. Together, we will help fund their work to keep people safe the next time the cold arrives. Tonight on Next. The woman who was once the star DNA analyst for Colorado law enforcement is in custody herself tonight. Missy Woods turned herself in today. Investigators brought in from out of state are recommending more than 100 charges against her for manipulating data used in prosecutions. And we're now getting our closest look at just what that meant. Here's Marshall Zellinger.
Missy Woods has gone from a Colorado Bureau of Investigation DNA expert interviewed by this station to a former DNA analyst who now has a mugshot. She turned herself in today. CBI asked the South Dakota Division of Criminal Investigation to look into the data manipulation she was accused of. An arrest warrant today details 58 of more than 500 cases, and 38 of them are sex assault cases, from Colorado Springs to Denver, CU Boulder and Blackhawk to Winter Park and Rocky Mountain National Park. Cases where Woods is accused of saying there was no male DNA detected when there was, or changed data values so that DNA analysis would not be performed. The arrest warrant says Woods could not indicate how many times she falsely reported, quote, no male DNA present, when in fact there was at least some amount of male DNA present. When asked about one specific example, she said the benefit would be expediency.
I think that's about as manipulative as it can get without, say, adding in another sample from a different person and saying that that person was there when they weren't.
Attorney Kevin Benninger does not have a case impacted by Woods. As a defense attorney, DNA is used as evidence often.
These samples are usually kept and can be retested.
He said if there's someone in prison in a case that Woods assisted on, an appeal would take into account more than just the DNA evidence.
And the judge is going to look at how much did that impact the outcome of the case. In other words, was there overwhelming evidence of guilt aside from the DNA evidence where the judge can't find that it would have made a difference in the outcome?
Of the 58 cases referenced in the arrest warrant, 2/3 of them had police reports but no court record, suggesting that 2/3 did not have enough evidence to make an arrest or go to court. What the arrest warrant spells out today is accusing Woods of manipulating data in a way that did not identify a suspect, Kyle, and less about identifying the wrong suspect.
I think that's what we've always wondered about, right? Because you can have an idea of like, I bet you this is what was behind it, but that doesn't always match up with what you read.
Sure, until today I was thinking maybe there are people behind bars that maybe have evidence that wasn't correct or some piece of the evidence wasn't, but maybe they were still guilty. But today I'm thinking there are people who reported a crime, and it went nowhere perhaps because this piece of evidence wasn't done correctly, and they were just told by investigators, sorry, we don't have enough to even try to make an arrest. I didn't know that until today. I didn't think like that.
And you just have to wonder, like, how many hundreds or thousands of people out there in Colorado are now wondering, like, did this impact somebody that I loved? Whether they were on the victim side, whether they were on the suspect side, or whatever else, did this impact somebody that I know? Marshall Zellinger, thank you. The Trump administration is now threatening to prosecute state and local officials who they deem to be interfering with mass deportation efforts. A Justice Department memo obtained by the Washington Post directs Trump administration staff to identify state and local laws that threaten to impede deportations and prepare to challenge those laws in court. That would certainly include Colorado's, where local law enforcement are not legally allowed to detain people solely for immigration violations. Elected Democrats in Colorado have repeatedly said they will cooperate with the federal government on immigration, but only within the bounds of state law, which blocks local law enforcement from detaining someone based solely on immigration status and from sharing that info with the feds. State and federal courts have affirmed that law, striking down attempts to overturn those laws, efforts led by conservative counties like Douglas County, ruling that ICE can request help from local authorities but cannot force the locals to perform federal immigration duties. Denver Mayor Mike Johnson has said that the city will not, quote, do ICE's job for them. And today, Democratic state legislators and immigration advocacy groups said the same.
We've already ensured that local law enforcement should be following state law and not doing ICE's job for them.
You know what all of this is about? Whether ICE is a special agency that has exceptions from the Constitution or is a law enforcement agency that needs to do their damn job.
Yesterday, Trump's border czar warned that immigration officers could cast a wider net in states with laws like Colorado, doing more widespread community raids rather than just picking up specific violent criminals directly from local jails. The Trump administration is moving to designate the Venezuelan gang Tren de Aragua as a terrorist organization. That opens up new tools for the government, even the military, to fight that transnational gang. Importantly, in Colorado, we'll be watching to see if Trump's Justice Department starts to charge people with material support for terrorism if they're accused of knowingly offering some help to TDA gang members. It is the State Department that has to officially label TDA a terrorist group. An executive order from President Trump gives the State Department 2 weeks to make its recommendation. Aurora police first acknowledged the presence of TDA in the metro area in early August. There have been roughly 20 arrests of people that Aurora police have identified as members or associates of TDA. Trump came to campaign in Aurora, falsely claiming that the city had been conquered by this gang. Aurora City leaders and police have offered a series of conflicting claims for months about the extent of that gang's activity and influence, which police have said is confined to a handful of properties owned by a landlord group that the mayor has described as an out-of-state slumlord. There is one Colorado Republican in Congress willing to criticize President Trump's blanket pardons and commutations for the J6 rioters, including those who violently attacked police. And it is not former police officer turned Congressman Gabe Evans. He's still in line with Trump. It is Congressman Jeff Herd from the Western Slope, who is breaking with other Republicans over these pardons. Herd is newly arrived in Congress. He represents the historically Republican district that did have Lauren Boebert as their congressperson before she nearly lost the seat and then escaped to a safer Republican district on the other side of the state. Today, Herd told us, quote, "I'm deeply disappointed by the pardons for those who assaulted law enforcement officers and for those who fought to stop the constitutional certification of the 2020 election." Boebert has said that she supports the pardons, even of those who attacked law enforcement, and Boebert has said she wants to give the J6 rioters a tour of the Capitol. Denver's team working to end homelessness says the city is now shifting its focus from moving people indoors to making sure that people can get a job and a home after they leave the city-owned shelters. Denver's Point People on Housing say that they have reached their goal of moving 2,000 people indoors in 2024. The goal for this year, move 2,000 more people indoors and help 2,000 people get into permanent housing. Now, to do that, Mayor Mike Johnson's office says the city plans to improve behavioral health and substance abuse services at their shelters and micro-communities, as well as providing career coaching workshops and job fairs, and pairing people with housing navigators. At a community meeting today, some critics on city council said that Denver needs to have a backup plan for especially vulnerable people who've been living on the streets.
There is a certain population that is not going to be able to live independently. They are going to require some sort of housing situation that if Mary walks out and doesn't have a shirt on, somebody is like, "Mary, come with me. Let's get your clothes on. We're going to go to breakfast."
Councilwoman Stacey Gilmore suggested opening a long-term housing center for people who will need additional services. The city says it's going to have its point-in-time survey next week, which will give a better idea of the current state of homelessness in Denver. When temperatures dropped below zero over the weekend and stayed there for days, shelters began filling up with people coming in out of the cold. And it included one spot in Aurora that is reserved just for families. That's why this week's Word of Thanks microgiving campaign supports the nonprofit Kidas Crisis Center. Kidas has been around for decades, and it recently transitioned to serving just families. When families come into Kidas' shelter in Aurora during the deep freeze, most reported that they had been staying in their cars, but it just got too cold. They also said that a surprising number of families reported that they had been sheltering in enclosed bus stops at night. Kidas serves families through their transitional family shelter, helping people get back on their feet. A similar shelter that's especially for veterans and their families as they work towards self-sufficiency. And they also open up as an emergency shelter for families whenever it gets dangerously cold. That has happened 6 times so far this winter. Scan the QR code on your screen or text the word THANKS to 303-871-1491 to get that link to donate. Your $14 million in microgiving proves that $5 donations add up fast. So as always, I'll match the first 50 donations of $5 to get us rolling. 4,000 of you have signed up to simplify your giving by getting a monthly donation set up to the Word of Thanks Fund. You put in your info once, we split it among all the nonprofits we feature each week. It means that we have started your recent microgiving campaigns with more than $30,000 in donations each week. You can use that same QR code or text to get there. All right, you asked, we'll answer. Is there such thing as stock show weather? Or is January just cold around here?
We saw last week that they were closing after many years in business.
And farewell to a much-loved family business that also happened to be really, really good at filling bellies in Denver. That's next.
Hello, welcome back. I'm 9 News Weather Impact Team meteorologist Kathy Sabin. A chilly, windy day today is the first of 2 weather system crosses Colorado from the northwest. We started in the teens and warmed to just about freezing this afternoon. Weather headlines include more wind. A lot of us were kept awake last night by those gusty winds, which are creating some ground blizzard conditions in the foothill canyons and over elevated terrain. Current readings are in the 20s, but with that wind out of the north, it feels colder than that. Tracking the wind, which will increase along the foothills as one weather system shifts off to the east and the second one comes in tomorrow. A few snow showers, but not a great impact, so no advisories for snow or wind tonight, but it's definitely not going to be quiet. And tomorrow, I think we'll have a little more sunshine than we had today, and that might help tick up those numbers a little bit higher than the 31 we saw today. 22 now, we drop into the teens overnight. The snow forecast for Saturday with the weekend storm, Denver appears to be in that 1 to 4 inch range, starting late Friday through midday Saturday. So your 7-day forecast, cool and windy on Thursday, the warmest day of the week Friday, potential weather impact day Saturday with light accumulating snow during the morning, cold weekend highs in the 20s ahead of a slow warming trend, sunshine in mid-40s for Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday.
Tonight's next question comes from a viewer named Debbie, wondering if there's any truth to the idea that the stock show always brings extreme cold to Denver, like it did last weekend. Well, Debbie, I am no weatherologist, but yeah, I mean, January tends to be pretty cold around here. Meteorologist Chris Bianchi says the last few stock shows have seen some pretty extreme weather.
First of all, hello from Steamboat Springs, where I'm at a weather conference this week. So stock show weather in Denver. On average, our high temperature in Denver for the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th weeks of January is about 45 degrees, with an average low temperature about 19 degrees. January, we average about 6.5 inches of snow during the month of January, which actually does not rank in our top 3 snowiest months on average. However, January on average is a bit more consistent light snowfall. So usually during the month of January, we kind of get these little bits of snow, a push of colder air, and so it does feel a bit stock showy. That said, I kind of want to finish with this important point. I think the last couple of years, we may be kind of warping our sense of what we typically see with stock show weather because we've had 2 really notable Arctic outbreaks this year and last year. Also, this will finish as our 4th consecutive January with below average temperatures for us in Denver. And we've also had really snowy Januaries. 3 of the last 4 Januaries will feature way above average snowfall for us in the month of January in Denver. So that may be kind of warping our sense of what we typically see with stock show weather in Denver. It's been a little rougher than usual the last few years. Hope that answers your question.
It does. Thanks for working on your break, Bianchi. Man, Crispy just works like a dog. Send us your next question, anything you've wondered about Colorado. You can't be the only one with a question. You can send in written questions, video questions, audio questions. Email them to next@9news.com or text next 303-871-1491. It went from being a hidden gem to a well-known jewel in Denver's food scene. Now a family restaurant on Federal prepares to serve its last meals. A reminder, you can also catch Next streaming each night, 6 p.m. on 9 News Plus, and Next is a podcast each weeknight. You can find an audio version of the show wherever you get your podcasts. If you don't think Denver has great food, go try a half dozen places on Federal and get back to us. Although you need to go fast to make it into a family-owned spot that's closing soon.
Okay. Hi. You got two of us. Two? Okay, have a seat here. You have this incredible grouping of diverse restaurants where you can go down the street and get tacos, you can get pho, you can get dumplings.
The Dan Dan noodles, the wontons that they make.
And it's authentic and it's real and it's made with love.
We are at Lao Wang Noodle House. I'm the son of Chun Wang and Zheng Wang. Immigrated to the U.S. in 1985. Dad had this dream of starting his own little business after cooking around Colorado for decades. So it's been a wonderful experience being here after Dad passed away a little over 3 years ago.
We saw last week that they were closing after many years in business.
In a couple of weeks, we're going to be, unfortunately, locking up the door and walking out, having some dumpling downtime.
Gosh, the love, the reception from the community has been nothing short of incredible.
Special wonton, hot baker.
I think just seeing Mom being cheerful and having her, who she calls friends, is going to be what we'll miss the most.
Okay, thank you.
The economics of keeping this running with Mom getting older and, frankly, the current conditions for hospitality in restaurants aren't great, especially here in Denver.
I'm very happy that Mama Wang gets some time off, but the community is definitely going to miss her.
Okay, which one?
Very thankful for just the support surrounding us and the love that everyone has for our family.
It's so deeply meaningful to know that people really appreciated it. We're going to miss you.
Thank you, thank you.
Lao Wang Noodle House's last day serving will be February 15th. Danny says that he hopes that it is not the end of his family serving food in town. They still have all the recipes. He says Mama Wang's far too feisty just to sit idle for all that long. We're back with your feedback next. Thank you. When the deep cold hit, families living on the streets of Aurora came into the warmth of the Kidas Crisis Center. That nonprofit operates a transitional family shelter year-round and then opens up extra space as an emergency shelter when it gets cold. Families reported that they had come in from living in their vehicles. There were some living in enclosed bus stops around the city. Kidas was there for them, and they are there to help families get back on their feet through their long-term programs as well, offering transitional housing options and wraparound support. Scan the QR code on your screen or text the word THANKS to 303-871-1491 to get that link to join me and a bunch of other Coloradans in donating a bit to the Kidas Crisis Center. That link will allow you the opportunity to either give one time or sign up to make a monthly donation to support each Word of Thanks nonprofit without having to put in your info over and over again. Feedback tonight by text about Congresswoman Lauren Boebert's offer to give a Capitol tour to the January 6 rioters. They say, didn't those criminals already get a tour of the Capitol? Suppose they did, but it's probably tough to really get an appreciation for the architecture and history when you have to step over the body of the police officer you've just assaulted. We'll see you next time.